Today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on episode 12, and now I haven't recorded one of these in a while, so I do apologise. It's been a few days since I did episode 11, but that does mean that I've had a lot of time to prepare this episode. I know literally every single event that's going to be happening in this episode, which is either a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, and we'll see. This is kind of like the first episode where I plan everything. Normally I plan like half of everything, but like I plan every single event this episode, so I don't know if that will make a difference or if it will just seem the same. But yeah, this is episode 12. In the last episode, we saw some events happen. I mean, the Kurdish Empire over here, they're constantly expanding. I honestly can't remember what we saw. Episode 11, what was it even called? Oh, there was the Crusade. That was the main thing. Albania won the Crusade, creating, obviously, the religion over here, the Torch religion. I think that's the name I went with. This kind of like green religion. And I guess I actually didn't write this down, but to kind of start this off, we actually see that this Torch religion has basically spread further and further, now going ahead and encompassing like further inland, converting a lot more of these kind of like Greek-ish people, even trying to convert the Turks to some extent. If you look on the ethnic map, we can see that some Turks are kind of converting. But the first thing I wanted to show on this kind of world map in this episode is that I've updated the ideology layer. I've given everyone proper sized squares, and I can also go ahead and go through all the ideologies quickly. Now, I guess kind of the lowest ideology per se, you could say, is something like the Grand Duchy, any of these like magenta-ish ones, which by the way, there are a lot more, especially over in Iberia, as well as in England. And there's also one here, and there's also two here in Anatolia. Also, by the way, assume if they don't have an ideology, they're a duchy, so they're led by a duke. But Grand Duchy is above duke and duchy, but it's below king and kingdom, which king and kingdom are these kind of like purplish, ones, like just this normal purple, normal purple, normal purple. Up here, we all see up here that Jutland is also a normal purple, and this is kind of like showing that Venice is kind of losing its grip because more and more places are just becoming kingdoms. We also see this in Valencia. This just kind of happens over time, and like Venice can't really stop this country from becoming a kingdom because they're so far away, you know. But yeah, Jutland is a kingdom. Also over here, like Armenia is a kingdom, and also this country down here. What did I call this? I forgot. The Rasht country, I think that was the name. But yeah, so that's kingdom, and then we have Tsardom over here, which is the same level as kingdom, but it's mainly just this kind of like Balkan ideology, I guess, like the Tsardom of Albania, the Tsardom of Montenegro, Tsardom of Serbia, Tsardom of Varna, Tsardom of Byzantium, or I'll probably just call it Byzantium if I'm being honest. Yeah, so those are like the main ones that are led by a monarchy. Then also led by a monarchy, I guess, are their empires. So we have two empires right now. They're led by emperors. The empire of the Kurds, or the Kurdish Empire, and the Swiss Empire, the Empire of the Swiss. So that's that. So there's all the monarchy ones. And then we have over here Bohemian Republicanism, which is like this weird confederation thing. And that's just kind of Bohemia's weird mess. Then we have this Hungarian monarchism. So this is technically also a monarchy. So, you know, but it's kind of different. Also over here, why is this random place a kingdom? Was that always there? My bad. This is meant to go ahead and be a Tsardom. And then finally, I think we have over here, which is actually Swiss Republicanism. Now, this ain't in the Swiss, which is interesting, but the Swiss Republicanism is basically the idea that you have a consul and you have like a high council and all that. So we see it over here in the Republic of Anatolia, not Republic of Anatolia, yeah, that's what it's called, Republic of Anatolia, and it's also spread through most of Anatolia. And surprisingly over here, we actually see it spread through a lot of England, with Cornwall and this kind of Dover country, there we go, that's what it's called, are Grand Duchies. But yeah, I think that's it for the ideology map. Anything without, again, is normally just like a normal duchy, or they're just not important enough for me to show it, so I'm not going to. But yeah, anyway, let's go ahead and get into the actual conflict. That was just a bit of an update on the ideology map. But anyway, for the first event, we have to go over to Provence. Because Provence is a pretty interesting country. They haven't done too much throughout their history. They've always been like kind of the number 2 power. However, they've dropped down to, I think, number 5, or at least they're definitely not top 3 anymore. And they want to get some power back. And how are they going to do this? Well, first they're going to go ahead and be forging an alliance, which will go ahead and be, what shape should we choose? I'm thinking a triangle will suffice over here. We go ahead and see the triangle alliance will be created with an outline size of 2. I guess. But here we go. We see the Triangle Alliance, which will go ahead and contain Aquitaine over here. But yeah, the first thing Provence does is make an alliance down here. We actually see that they also go ahead and make an alliance with Catalonia down here, kind of forming this, I don't know, tripartite alliance. No, that sounds like wasn't that the Axis thing? I don't know. Triple alliance, whatever. This just kind of French-led alliance, essentially. But Provence is not done. As Provence, it feels like it needs to expand its border, and it can't really expand anywhere. Like, it could invade the Pyrenees, but that doesn't really offer anything. They're friends with Aquitaine. They can't beat the Swiss. Invading Turin is just pointless. There's not really a point. So where are they going to go? Well, they're actually going to go into Africa, and they will be going over to this green country and say, hey, we could just split this country. And the green country will be like, absolutely, let's go ahead and split this country. So we go ahead and see the French forces will move in, and they'll quickly go ahead and surround the city and begin sieging it. Well, over from here, we see that the green country will go ahead and move in and just go ahead and take this. And eventually, we see that this country over here, let me stop trying to use the clone tool, will go ahead and fall as we see that France's siege is successful, as the Algerian kind of city over here had pretty terrible fortifications. And we can go ahead and look at a little peace treaty between these three countries. And there we go, looking at this peace treaty, we can go ahead and see that this country has been split. But we also see that France will go ahead and push itself down into this region, as they have heard of all the good cavalry that comes from this region. Although I'm pretty sure this region isn't populated by Berbers, it might be actually. Yeah, not really populated by Berbers. But, I mean, the Algerians can still make pretty good cavalry from this region. But it's really the Berber cavalry is the one you want. Their way of life just basically makes them produce really good cavalry. We also see over here that Florence will be expanding its land, also trying to take advantage of the local cavalry. I keep saying cavalry, it's so weird. It sounds like such a fake word. Cavalry, cavalry, cavalry. But we also see someone who's also getting some cavalry. We'll go ahead and be this Algerian country, which will expand its borders. Now looking something like this, now looking like a decently sized country. But we also see over here that both Valencia and the Cadiz country will be pushing into Morocco. And there we go, we see over here that 6 new duchies, kingdoms, countries, whatever you want to call them, are created in Morocco. Well, up here, the Cadiz country expands a lot, as well as Valencia, and this is what Morocco and I guess kind of North Africa as a whole is looking like. Now, the border does look very squiggly, but that's just kind of something I have to go ahead and deal with, because I can't draw borders properly. But what I can do is place down capital cities, and we can go ahead and look at where the capital cities of all these countries will go ahead and be. And there we go ahead and see that a bunch of new capital cities are going to go ahead and pop up. Over here, we see that this red country has their capital city on the coast. This pink country actually has a pretty big city here, which is kind of in this more fertile region over here. I was going to put the capital city of the red team here, but it would just look really weird, and I don't like weird. Actually, that sounds really rude. And then these other countries will have their capital cities in just kind of a bit more optimal locations. And then over here, a pretty big city will appear over in Cadiz's Moroccan culture, if I can click the right layer. There we go. And will we see a big city appear in Valencia's one? I guess we can. We go ahead and see that apparently Morocco is a very populated region, because there are now 4, well, technically there's 5 big cities over here down in Morocco. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at the next event. And for the next event, we are going over to the Swiss Empire. Now, Johann, who is still alive, by the way, he's just very old. He is unfortunately dying. People don't know how long he has left to live, even though the best doctors for the time, which are terrible, by the way, think that he doesn't have long left. And he wants to go out with a bang. And he's basically going to say, you know what, I'm going to look at my borders and think, I've kind of beat these guys already. I've already beat these guys. Austria, nah, don't really care. They're basically Swiss people if you really think about it. The Bohemians, they're just a bunch of barbarians. I don't even care about them. And then they're going to look up north and be like, Jutland, that is an enemy that I could crush. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And perfect timing, because if we look at the ethnicity map, some pretty big scandals have gone down over here in the Jutland country. And that is the king of the Jutland country doesn't really want to be associated with German ethnicity, because that's like barbarians and less. So we actually see that we basically just see the proclamation of a brand new sub-ethnicity up here, which will go ahead and be this kind of Danish ethnicity up over here, which will still be under the German ethnicity, but it will just kind of be its own little sub-ethnicity up here. We also see that the Germans have gone ahead and populated this city down here, just kind of like unrelated, but I'm just kind of trying to fix this border a little bit, although it's not meant to look good because it's an ethnicity border. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and fix this real quick and then we'll be back. Okay, there we go. That looks a bit better. But yeah, this side of ethnicity has increased tensions in the country, but also with mainly with like the outside neighbors down here. So the Swiss Empire, Johann himself, is going to go and basically attack these regions. We see that the Emperor will call this like the Great Northern Conquest, or maybe even a crusade at this point. Probably not, because it's not religious. That's what a crusade is. But yeah, these are the two main targets. This obviously is a bunch of like barbarian tribes over here. It's not necessarily like a big kingdom like this. So we see that Johann's first stop will be over here, as Johann's force will go ahead and decisively split this up into two, although I mean it doesn't really matter that much. But we see that Johann will go ahead and go on to win some very crushing victories over here before sending a smaller force led by a sister down here to crush the south. And eventually we see that despite taking heavy losses, Johann loses a lot of his army here, that eventually these regions will be slowly crushed out. It will take a few years and Johann gets closer and closer to death, but eventually he will manage to subdue these regions, and then he will go on his main conquest, which is the Kingdom of Jutland. His army is weakened, but it is still Johann, and it is still the Swiss, which is probably the best army in the world. So they will go ahead and slowly inch up, but with every battle, Johann is, hanging on with his life. And eventually we see they win a huge battle up here. Johann sustains pretty bad injuries, but we see that almost all of Jutland will go ahead and fall over to the Swiss, like so, leaving only a few cities without swearing loyalty. This northern region will go in and swear loyalty, and we quickly see that almost all land of the Jutland will go ahead and fall over to the Swiss, and all the Swiss have to do is take their capital city. As you see that the Swiss will begin a siege of the capital city, like so, and they will eventually go ahead and secure this peninsula, now cornering in the city looking something like that. And unfortunately, Johann will go ahead and get sick here, and he will go ahead and realize that he's dead. He's got a day to live, and he will order an all-out assault on this castle here. And we actually see that this assault will fail humiliatingly, as Jutland will use this as an opportunity to launch a counterattack, as Johann is killed. Well, it's unknown whether he's killed or dies of like a disease, but nonetheless Johann dies, and this quickly leads to a bunch of regions, especially up in the north, will just resubmit over to Jutland. They were never really suppressed anyway, and we see that the campaign of the Swiss has turned into a disaster as Jutland pushes the Swiss back to around this border. However, by this time, Johann's sister has kind of reorganized the line and has pushed back Jutland even a bit, like here. And eventually we see that the Jutland people will push them back, and eventually there's kind of a bit of stalemate over here, and we're going to go ahead and have to look at a peace treaty where it's kind of failed, but it's kind of succeeded. It succeeded over here, but like it kind of succeeded here, but obviously Johann's dead, which kind of does mean that Johann's sister has to come back to the capital to obviously get coronated as emperor, but also secure a position, because many people don't really trust that she is good enough to go ahead and rule them. So yeah. And there we go. These are the brand new borders. We can see that Jutland did lose some land. However, they mainly regained full independence and control of their own kingdom up here. And we even see that Jutland has gone ahead and, searched for more land. And they've actually gone ahead and discovered, well, I say discovered. Obviously, this land probably would have already been discovered and settled, but they will go ahead and find this kind of like peninsula over here. But first, they will go ahead and take the island in which the capital city of Copenhagen lays on. I don't know what the island is actually called, before establishing a little colony over here, like so. But if we actually look at the ethnicity, these people are actually, sorry if you're Danish, look away, but they're actually Swedish people. Or at least a sub-ethnicity of Swedish people. The main Swedish people obviously reside in Sweden, but this kind of sub-ethnicity is very present up here in southern Sweden and also Denmark. I guess you're going to say this like the Copenhagen ethnicity, or what's it called? Scania? I don't know. Someone tell me in the comments how to pronounce it. Is it Scania? Scania? I don't know. But anyway, this ethnicity is obviously not part of the Danish ethnicity, but Jutland will go ahead and be expanding into here nonetheless. But yeah, the main point is that almost all of modern day Germany, if not all of it, is now under control of the Swiss, and they are looking very chunky over here. Let me put up the modern borders later, because that's somewhere. There we go, modern borders. Yeah, literally almost all of Germany, at least all of Germany is taken, but almost all of Germany is now under the control of the Swiss, probably about 90%, and they've done well for themselves here. But they've kind of run out of unclaimed land to claim now. I mean, I could extend them over into Poland, but that would look honestly terrible. And yeah, so they've kind of run out of land. But also I'm trying to go ahead and erase this. But this is kind of annoying me. But yeah, also over here, this kind of land has been taken. And we actually see that the Swiss are just going to go ahead and snap this island for themselves for some reason. They just kind of wanted to do that, and so they did. Oh, I got rid of the unknown layer instead of modern borders. But then we actually see that the Swiss will go ahead and sail this island over to Jutland because it looks so ugly. But yeah, so the Swiss made a profit. They took land, and the Swiss are, they're getting stronger, basically. They're trying to compete with the rumors of this great Kurdish empire over here. And also, on the topic of the Kurdish empire, they're actually not expanding this episode for once. They're dealing with internal issues. So, they're not going to be expanding. So this is a W for all the Swiss glazers, which I actually saw that loads of people wanted the Swiss to collapse. Not happening, at least anytime soon. But yeah. Also, if it didn't say the year, this happened in the year 182, which honestly means that Johann was probably like 80 when this happened. I didn't say when he was born, but like, I don't know, the timing of the series is a bit off, but it's kind of because we have characters. So once Johann's sister passes away and we have no more characters, or maybe I just like forget she exists, then we can kind of do what happens in normal Wixo, where like they jump like 300 years in one episode, and then the next episode it's like 1 year. But anyway, moving on to the next event, which is the main topic of the video. And for our next event, we have to go ahead and talk about Florence over here. Now, Florence has been dominating Italy. They have expanded a lot. If I go ahead and pull this out, they originally used to look something a bit like this, and then they gone ahead and won Corsica and some more Italian land, and eventually they went ahead and colonized Sardinia, and then they went and expanded, and then they expanded again, and then eventually they expanded again, now looking something like this, and obviously they went to Africa and stuff. And the main reason they've been doing this is because of their strong military, like I said. And now their strong military mainly relies off their Berber land down here, which produces some of the finest cavalry in the world. However, there is a problem because Florence is kind of mistreating their people down here. And eventually, this will be a breaking point where we go ahead and see that in the main Berber city, people will go ahead and rise up, and they will quickly go ahead and absolutely just kick Florence off of this land, absolutely just destroying them. Everyone revolts. The Berber people are a very united and patriotic ethnicity, and are proud of, existing, essentially. And we quickly see that this Berber kingdom will go ahead and get like-minded people to go ahead and join. And we quickly see that this Berber kingdom will go ahead and expand to something like that, looking very big. However, eventually Florence they have the superior navy. They're going to go ahead and re-land. They're not giving this up. They need this. And they will go ahead and land in the city before winning some pretty big battles against the cavalry Ren, actually managing to go ahead and re-siege the city. However, eventually we see that a huge Berber cavalry force, I'm talking like this is the biggest cavalry charge in history, will march, and they will absolutely shatter Florence, destroying like almost all of their troops, and they will quickly lose. And Florence will eventually have to go over to this new Berber kingdom and say, you know what, we accept that you are an independent nation, and you can go ahead and be independent. And they will be like, thank God, because we were just going to massacre you every time you came over here. And they will go ahead and be probably the strongest North African nation, one of the only really big independent ones. So yeah, there we go. We go in and see the creation of this nice Berber kingdom. However, we'll come back to them later because they're not done on their expansionist gains. But anyway, going over to the Balkans, things are heating up. The first thing that heats up is over here with Bulgaria and Byzantium. We actually see that these two countries will go ahead and decide to basically just partition this land. Now, this actually isn't a war. We actually see that the king of Bulgaria has gone ahead and died, or the duke, and they basically have no royal family. So the surrounding kingdoms will just go ahead and carve this up. And it will be carved up looking something a bit like this, with now Varna and Byzantium kind of bordering each other, and also Macedonia. And we actually have to go over to the alliance layer because a bunch of countries are going to be joining this, including Varna, Byzantium, but also over here West Macedonia, which is pretty controversial because, as I said in the last episode, I think Albania and West Macedonia have some border disputes. So there's some pretty big tensions with this happening. But yeah, the Balkan League is now basically encompassing all of the Balkans. Obviously excluding like Croatia and stuff, but that's not considered the Balkans in this universe, if you will. Although it kind of is. But like, yeah, they're on the outskirts of the Balkans. But anyway, going back to the Berbers, they've just entered a dispute with the second strongest country in the world, Sicily. And basically, the Berbers have begun raiding Sicilian land. Obviously, the second biggest Berber city is actually this city over here. This is like the biggest populated Berber city, but this is the second one, not by like far. But anyway, yeah, they're trying to launch raids because they are pissed off at the Italians for even being over here. So we eventually see that Sicily will have no choice but to go ahead and declare war on Berbers, and they'll quickly move their army in. They probably are one of the strongest armies in the world. I mean, they're the second strongest country in the world. I just said in the world like 100 times. But they will quickly move their army in, and they will go ahead and secure this region, slowly, squashing it down. While down here, they will move in to secure this land, which I'm pretty sure there's actually meant to be a lake here, but I think it's dried out in real life, but obviously it'd be there and here. And we quickly see that the Berbers are getting slammed, but they're not really getting slammed because their huge army is still like somewhere over here. And eventually this huge army will do the exact same thing they did to Florence. The Italians never learn, and they will crush the Sicilian army over here, absolutely just reliberating all of their land over here. However, the Sicilian army down in the south will hear this and be like, hey, we got months of time. But it's horsemen. They can march much faster than you think. And we see that these horsemen will march extremely far, absolutely cutting off and ambushing this huge Sicilian army, also destroying them. And yeah, like 30,000 Sicilian men have died and around 5,000 Berber men have died. And that's like all of Sicily's African units gone. Yeah, Sicily, this is not going too well. As we continue to see, the Berbers will just crush any Sicilian force given at them. And this kind of just shows the world how elite cavalry is, and that they are really the deciding factor in war. As we see that these cavalry forces will go ahead and march all the way over to here, and they will actually begin a siege of Carthage. Well, down here, they will go ahead and manage to secure this city, just charging through the gates, and also having people open up the gates. And we quickly see that this whole region down here will just fall over to the Berbers. Well, up over here, the Berbers will go ahead and subdue this region. We're eventually moving in on their final city down here, other than the capital. And the world is seeing this, and are like, what the hell? How are the Berbers doing this? But also, like, this is at least kind of weak, and Venice is like, maybe I should try and take my land back. But, they won't, because they don't want to start another huge war. However, then we see that Sicily will go ahead and request help from countries like Naples, and also Genoa to some extent, maybe. And they will go ahead and hire a bunch of mercenaries and also send a bunch of forces. And they will eventually go ahead and re-land in here, managing to actually cut off a pretty big Berber army, which will then storm out of here. However, this region will go ahead and succumb back. And we see that Sicily will go ahead and regain a foothold up here and win a few battles. However, eventually, we see that they will be defeated yet again and push back. And eventually, Sicily has no choice but to go ahead and surrender. They've lost around 50,000 men. They can't keep putting into this. And we can go ahead and take a look at a little peace treaty between these countries. And there we go, looking at this peace treaty, we can see that the Berbers have basically taken almost all of North Africa, except this kind of Carthage region. And if you're an Italian / Carthaginian, you should be happy you aren't under the Berbers. Because if we look at the people that are under the Berbers, if we go ahead and turn this map on, that, yeah, these people over here, unfortunately, they're going to get massacred by the Berbers, who have gone ahead and done some massacring during this war, but also after. Now, basically just murdering all of the people over here. As we see, the Berber ethnicity has gone ahead and expanded into this region. Some areas will go ahead and exist over here, but for the most part, all of the people in the Berber kingdom have been now either not really converted to the Berber ethnicity, but either like killed or they're just gone, basically. We also see that the Berbers will go ahead and expand their land further into the Sahara, further than any country has done. And it will go ahead and look something a bit like this, annexing all of that land, now becoming a very big country. And these borders absolutely suck, if I'm being honest. This country has pushed further into the Sahara than anyone has. And that is mainly because the people living here are under this kind of Berber ethnicity. We actually see the people over here that they have conquered that are part of Libya. These people won't be as subject to kind of murdering, but kind of the regions in the Sahara will slowly lose people as the Italians / Libyans kind of move to the main kind of like industrial regions. I mean, they're not industrial. Oh, urban. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. But for the most part, the people over here are safe, as the Berbers aren't really worried about, murdering them. But yeah, there we go. And we actually see that this Berber kingdom will no longer be called a kingdom, as they will join the world as a third empire, as we go ahead and see the creation of the Berber Empire. As we go ahead and see that this kind of Berber Empire down here, which is very military focused, but also like very skilled in terms of just cavalrymen, as you can see. Keep saying that. But yeah, these cavalrymen will be so good then they will go ahead and begin selling their people as mercenaries. Not selling their people, renting their people as mercenaries. But yeah, we quickly see that this Berber Empire will actually be probably the third biggest country in terms of landmass. Now, in terms of strength, they're probably not the third strongest, but they definitely are up there, mainly carried by their military strength. They don't have that good of an economy, otherwise they probably would be top 3. But yeah. But for the final event of the video, we have to go back over to the alliance layer, as there have been some pretty bad events for the Balkan League over here, and that is over some disputes in Albania / kind of like Western Macedonia. Albania claims like this kind of chunk of Western Macedonia, and to some extent they kind of claim the whole thing. However, Western Macedonia obviously doesn't want to give that to them because it's their land. Eventually, this dispute is going to get so bad that the Balkan League is actually going to split. As we see, the countries will have to choose to either join Western Macedonia's side or Albania's side. We see on Western Macedonia's side, they will obviously get Macedonia. However, they also get Montenegro. And pretty massively, they actually get Serbia and Bosnia, which means they basically get the whole alliance. However, don't forget over here that these two countries will actually be joining Albania. They kind of sympathize with Albania, but at the same time, they really just kind of want to take land from Macedonia because they both border Macedonia, and that would be very nice for them to take this land, so that's what they're going to go ahead and do. And we are gearing up to see next episode, the starting of the Second Balkan War. But yeah, that is the final event of the video. I thought I had so many events planned, but like this is the shortest recording I think I've ever done. But I don't think I'm going to continue anything. I mean, I fit so many events into there. Maybe I should plan. But yeah, we can look at power rankings, I guess. Let me double check my notes to make sure I've gone ahead and done everything. But I think that's everything I wanted to do. Oh, I just want to clarify the Berber Rebellion thing, which happened over here, happened in 185, so like 3 years after the whole Swiss Johann guy kind of dies. So that kind of puts some time scale on that. And yeah, I'm looking at these notes. That is everything, basically. And also, within this like Balkan conflict over here, we see that Venice, Sparta, and Croatia, which are normally the 3 outside powers in this conflict, all claim neutrality, as well as a bunch of other Italian powers, which probably weren't going to get involved anyway. So this kind of means that it's just this Balkan conflict over here without any outside powers. So that'd be interesting to look at. But you know what, as one final event, we'll actually look over here to Armenia, which has gone ahead and expanded their dominion. Now looking at something a bit like this, taking most of modern day Azerbaijan. If you actually look at modern borders, they probably have basically all of it. Yeah, they have almost all of modern day Azerbaijan. But yeah, we can go ahead and look at power rankings because we're done. But yeah, looking at the power rankings, these are from like 2 episodes ago. We can go ahead and look at the more modern ones. The number 1 country is still going to go ahead and be the Swiss, followed closely behind the Kurdish over here. Now, the Swiss gain a buff from this land, but they also gain a nerf from losing Johann, while over here the Kurdish kind of stayed the same kind of power, relatively speaking. And we actually see in number 3 would actually be Provence. Provence has like recovered massively, kind of like miraculously to some extent. And yeah, number 4 is actually going to be Florence. Sicily has been hit so hard that they've actually lost their number 5 spot. It's actually the Berbers over here, which have claimed number 5. Now, this is completely by their military. I'd imagine the Berbers might have the strongest military in the world just because of their cavalry. But that military is so superior that just on their own, that has boosted them to 5th place. Number 6 will be Sicily over here. Number 7 will be Venice, with number 8 going over to Serbia. Number 9 going over to Austria. Actually, scrap that. Number 8 will be going over to Valencia. Number 9 will be going over to Serbia. And wrapping out top 10 will be Austria. And that's the power rankings. Now, potentially, Jutland could be in there. Some of the Balkan countries, potentially. Cadiz, maybe. And also kind of Armenia over here. But the thing is, countries like Armenia and Jutland don't really have the like advanced tech that they kind of have over in Europe. So that's why those are lower. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a bunch of fun recording this. Can't wait to edit it. Well, I actually can't wait to edit it. But yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.